welcome you all to Thai Union Group 2016 result announcement. Today, the executives who are joining us today are Mr. Joerg Ayrle, Thai Union Group CFO, and Mr. Ludovic Garnier, Head of Group Accounting and Controlling, and myself, Waiyanont, Investor Relations Manager. This event will comprise of approximately 30 minutes of presentation session. Then at the end of the presentation, we'll provide a Q&A section of approximately half an hour. Please do note this conference session will be conducted in English. For any participant who has any inquiry to our management, please type in the question box on the right and click send. We will raise them during the Q&A session post the presentation. Now I would like to have Mr. Joerg Ayrle, the Group Thai Union Group CFO, to start the briefing. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Best. Welcome, everybody. This is the second or third webcast that we're organizing like this, and we are happy that we have been able to schedule these earnings release webcasts now on a regular basis and very close to the actual earnings release. I think this gives analysts and investors and all interested parties the ability to discuss with us directly on what's going on, what's happening, and maybe get some more insights into what happened the last quarter, and in this case, what happened in 2016. Let me jump relatively quickly to, that's very slow here. To the page that probably most of you are most interested in. That is the Q4 earnings release. We have reached a revenue level of 33.6 billion Thai baht. That is a growth of 0.7% compared to Q4 2016. The growth was driven primarily from our acquisitions in Rügenfisch and in Chez in Canada and in Germany. Some product repricing in Europe helped us in this growth trajectory. However, overall, if we look only at the organic business, the organic business was contracting slightly, while our acquisitions have mainly driven and helped us to be here in the plus. I'm going to talk about that a little bit later. Gross profit is depressed with 14%. I think that's clearly below expectations. And throughout this presentation, you will hear me talk more clearly about our disappointment in the second half year of 2016 and the performance in Q4 specifically. I think overall, we've managed quite well the year. We have, on a reported basis, increased our operating profit to 1.4 billion and our net profit to 900 million, which is plus 19% and 2.7% of revenue. However, those of you who follow us for a longer period of time, you may remember that in Q4 2015, we took a substantial write-down on our fleet in Ghana. We took a hit of roughly $15 million. And if we eliminate that from our financials in Q4 2015, then we do see a decline in our operating profit and our net profit performance. So Q4 compared like for like, if we eliminate one-offs, is still depressed. And I think this is where, in our view, we should have or could have done better. But we also need to consider rising raw material prices have made our life here a lot more difficult, especially in tuna. This has affected our margins in the branded business in Europe, but also in salmon. Yes, we are gross margin break even in our salmon business in Europe, but still we're lacking here important positive contribution. If you look at the whole year, on the next page, we see a total growth of 7.3% from 125 billion to 134 billion. And we've started the year saying we need to focus on top-line growth. We need to drive a strong M&A strategy. We need to focus on our organic growth. Organic growth was available. We clearly grew in our organic business with a little bit more than 2%. And our M&A activities then added the remainder to come to a 7.3% growth year over year. Gross profit is more or less flat. Operating profit is more or less flat to 2016. EBITDA, as a consequence, is equally flat, slightly down, and our net profit is on the same level as last year with 5.3 billion Thai baht. And I think this is the good news, that despite the very difficult market environment, raw material prices that made life much more difficult for us, despite all the headwind from a difficult year in the US with a new presidential election, with a Brexit that happened, with the Eurozone going into currency devaluation against the Thai baht. I think despite all these changes, we have been very resilient to the financial performance. We have not depressed our financial performance compared to 2015, and we have stayed clearly flat compared to 15, while achieving a 7.3% growth. Our share price has increased from January to December by 24.3%. I think this is great news. Of course, the SET here in Thailand has helped us. The market in Thailand has improved as well, but we have clearly outperformed the market during this period. Net debt to equity has increased from 0.76 times equity to 1.37 times equity, and this is primarily due to the investments that we have done in Rügenfisch, Genu, and just recently Red Lobster, the acquisition we did, the minority acquisition into Red Lobster. If we eliminate Red Lobster from this, our net debt to equity is still below 1 time and shows that we have a very healthy balance sheet. We look at the last 3 years, last 12 quarters of revenue and earnings and gross margin, and this is where you see that we're not happy with the second part of the year. We have dropped our gross margin performance to around 14%. That is primarily led by the headwinds from the tuna price increases. We have in Q4 also shrimp price increases, and the salmon situation in Europe is not substantially better. So you see, normally we should be on a 15.5, 16 to 6.5% gross margin. During that period, we have not achieved that. I think that's the disappointment. At the same time, I think if we look at net income and our revenue, especially our revenue development, I think there's a very healthy growth trajectory that we show here quarter over quarter and year over year. Couple of participants are already asking questions. This is great. Let me come back to the questions at the end of the presentation, then we can just go through one by one. Recent developments, and it is great that we get awarded and people recognize what we're doing on sustainability, on investor relations, and on corporate governance. If we would earn money based on the awards we get, I think we would have a much better financial result. Unfortunately, all these awards in 2016 didn't turn into financial advancement, but here just a couple of recognitions. I think the most prominent in here, we won the SET's Best Investor Relations Award for a company in the market cap of 30 to 100 billion Thai baht, and I think this is an outstanding achievement and a recognition to the team here, especially of Kun Pako, and under his leadership to move into this accolade. We have maybe as an add-on, we have accomplished our refinancing for the Red Lobster acquisition funding. We have issued new bonds. We had the largest ever bond placement in Thailand with 12 billion baht, tenors 3, 5, 7, and 10 years. And we have been able to raise this at very attractive cost of debt. At the same time, we have secured long-term loans in the range of 12.5 billion baht to balance the rest of our capital needs, to secure the long-term financing for Red Lobster. Also that, thanks a lot to the participating banks who have helped us to get to very positive refinancing structures. We have divested a small activity in China. We've divested our 50% joint venture with Century Pacific. This was a long-planned strategic step to move out of a 50-50 joint venture with a Philippine peer company. And we have instead, and you see this in the same announcement, we have instead established Thai Union China in Shanghai as an importer that is driving marketing, branding, sales, and distribution of seafood and prepackaged food in China, with an initial focus on modern trade and on the online channel with large partner firms like Tmall or Alibaba. And we will hear of this hopefully in the next couple of quarters, where we see initial sales to ramp up and sales to grow, and we will share with you the successes along the way. Just as a quick recap, 2016 was a very busy year. Well, every year appears to be busy. We have completed several acquisitions. We pushed our sustainability initiatives forward. We do what we talk about. We talk about what we want to achieve, and we fully stand behind our commitments in sustainability to be a leader of change and to lead the change in the seafood industry towards sustainable and more sustainable managing of operations. We have added carbon footprint to our key agenda items to reduce carbon footprint in our reduction. We are one of the forefront leaders in defending and supporting human rights initiatives in Thailand and in ASEAN, and we are certainly among those who invest most into sustainable fishing, fishery improvement programs, and into sustainable fish to support our commitment to have 100% of all our branded seafood that we are, IMBN seafood that we are selling, either coming from MSC certified fisheries or from fisheries who are in a fishery improvement program. Very strong commitment, and I think it shows we really mean what we say and we do what we talk about. Corporate governance, we won several awards, and we are continuously working to improve our corporate citizenship, our corporate responsibility, as well as corporate governance structures throughout the company, not only here in Thailand, but throughout our global operations. What will interest all the investors of us to a large degree is our dividend policy. We are committed to continue on a minimum 50% payout of our dividend, but at the same time, we are also conscious of providing a solid, stable, and reliable income stream from owning our shares. So we have today agreed in the board of directors that we are paying a dividend of 31 satang. That brings our total payment for the year, for the fiscal year 16, to 63 satang, and that is on the same level as 2015. Well, not surprisingly, we have the same performance as 2015, so I think we should also let shareholders and investors benefit from that and be able to rely on a steady and sustainable income stream from Thai Union. If I now jump a little bit to the financial results, I'd like us, similar to last quarter, to just take a moment and focus on the 4 or 5 key takeaways that we see for our Q4 performance. Number one, our sales growth is real. We are a strong, growing, top-line growing company, and we do this organically, and we do it with M&As. In Q4, the organic growth was unfortunately not there, but we compensated this by our strong M&A drive in the company. We did realize that we are going into a weak gross profit margin situation, and we have been able to partly offset this by stringent cost control, by looking at overhead cost, by pushing SG&A cost well below 10% again, and we intend to keep it that way. But the weak gross profit margin is something that is with us since 2 quarters, and we need to consider that the high tuna prices and the high salmon prices will continue to be with us for a couple of months, and it may not be an immediate push of the button change in Q1 2017. So we have a weak gross profit margin. However, this encourages us to stay with strong cost control and drive efficiency in our operations. We delivered a stable performance despite strong headwinds. We have a strong resilience to negative environment. The environment in 2016, especially in the second half, was very difficult. In Q4, with a sudden strengthening of the US dollars, we had to accept unrealized currency losses from revaluing our hedge agreements, and we are under heavy margin pressure, especially in our branded business in Europe from the high raw material prices. However, we were still able to provide stable operating income and a stable net profit compared to 2015. I think this is one of the very strong messages, and that's why we also kept our dividend on the same level, that despite strong headwinds, we do deliver stable financial performance. Very good news is our performance on M&A in 2016. All our transactions that we did in 2016 were immediately value accretive at net profit level. All deals had an immediate earnings, positive earnings contribution. And Red Lobster, the largest seafood restaurant chain in the world, where we invested into a 25% equity stake in October, and where we bought another 24% convertible preferred units. The net income contribution of Red Lobster was 58 million baht in Q4, and that is a 7.7% EPS improvement and EPS contribution. I think when we announced the deal, we said we believe we should be around 6 to 7% EPS improvement from the transaction, and I guess this is exactly what we are delivering here. We had some one-time effects, not only negative ones, but also some positive ones. Negative ones, we had 311 million in unrealized currency losses in Q4. That is the result of a sudden increase or sudden strengthening of the US dollars, which leads to a mark-to-market revaluation of our hedge accounts, our hedge contracts. Under Thai financial reporting standards, we're not obligated to adopt hedge accounting yet. So these changes do affect our P&L. In Europe and in the US, such changes would usually be booked against equity. So these are non-cash effects on our financials, but it is still affecting reported income. We had a net tax gain in Europe mainly from our French activities. In France, the French government has adopted a new corporate income tax rate regulation that sees a reduction of corporate income tax rate from 33% to 28% by the year 2020. So you see a reduction from 33 to 28, and this has a direct effect on our deferred tax liabilities that had been calculated based on a 33% tax rate. Now, starting 2020, we are on a 28% tax regime, so you can release part of your deferred tax liabilities, and this has a very large positive effect. We come to the financials a little bit later to explain this. I don't need to comment much on the revenue growth on page 18. I think the message is clear. We are 0.7% up compared to Q4 16. We are 7.3% up year over year to 2015. We see clear organic growth from all of our operations in the range of 2.2%, and the rest is contributed by our acquisitions that we have consolidated in 2016. If we look at the branded, the breakdown of our business in branded business and in non-branded business, and in a geographic breakdown, we see that Europe, especially from the acquisitions, is gaining some importance for Thai Union. So now a third of the business is coming from Europe, 39% is coming from the US. We have some contraction in our US business, mainly from our decision to focus chicken off the sea on a higher margin basis. We are giving back bad trade transactions, bad trade deals. We're focusing on a higher margin, so this is successful. We have a higher margin in the chicken of the sea business in 2016 in the US, but at the same time we lost some market share. Personally, I don't think that this is too bad. If you reduce your revenue for the right reason, you give back loss-making contracts, and you focus on money-making contracts, I think these are smart decisions, and this is what we've done in our chicken of the sea business. The branded business is still 41%, pretty similar compared to prior year. What we are showing since a few quarters is a third channel in our business, so not only private label, business to business, or branded business, own brands. We also look at food service as a third pillar of our business, and food service is now contributing 13% of the total sales to Thai Union. Gross margin, I think I commented on it already. We are at 14% in Q4. We're at 14.8% for the whole year 2016. And the main reason, again, to recall, European salmon business reported gross profit break even in Q4. But still, it's just break even. It's not a positive gross margin contribution. So salmon prices in Europe are still one of the main drags to the business. Plus, we have a substantial margin pressure from rising tuna prices. If you look at the spread between January, where tuna prices were around $1,100 per ton, and you look at December, where we were at $1,700 per ton, this is very hard to completely push to customers and to consumers. So we are affected in our branded business in primarily Europe. We have, and you may see this if you look at the backup into the financial statement, we have removed from this our fleet operations. We have signed a memorandum of understanding with a potential buyer for the fleet. We're very certain that we can finally conclude the divestment of our fleet. So we have moved it from operating activities to discontinued operation. We're deconsolidating it, and we're only recording running losses. And in 2017, we expect to end this very quickly with the sale of the 5 remaining boats that we had. Operating profit, we're up 12.1% to 1.4 billion Thai baht. If you look at this chart, of course, we would have liked to be here better, and we would have liked to stay here in a range of 5.5% to 6%. But given the reasons and the depression in gross margin, even though we were able to reduce our SG&A expense from 10.4% a year ago to 9.8% in the last quarter, this was not fully compensating the gross margin drop. Year over year, 15-16, operating profit flat, which shows that even with all the headwind, we can still contribute a stable operating performance. EBITDA is then, of course, following with the same logic, and net income very similarly. The profit increase compared to 2015, lower fishing fleet-related losses. We did not have any acquisition expenses for Bumblebee. A year ago, we were still being charged with heavy effects from exiting the Bumblebee transactions. And we have lower tax expenses. We used a lot of the losses in our salmon business to offset income tax in Europe. If we look at a normalized, on a normalized level, and I know this is always then a discussion, what should be normalized, what should not be normalized. If we eliminate any and all one-offs in the quarter for Q4, and we do that for the prior quarters, we can actually see that we have a very nice, stable profit development that is around 1.4, 1.3 billion baht since a few quarters. We are slightly down compared to Q4 15, which had a great net income performance of 4.6% on a normalized basis. But I think this shows that there's a very healthy underlying earnings contribution. EPS, as a consequence, keeps the momentum. Red Lobster contributed 7.7% to our net income in Q4. We see sequentially Q4 15 to Q4 16 EPS improvement, and for the whole year we are now at roughly 1.1 baht per share of net income, and that relates back to the dividend that we are paying. We're paying 0.63 baht in dividend to our shareholders. One of the areas where we had been extremely successful for the last few years was cash conversion. Even up until Q1 this year or last year, with a great cash performance. 2014, 9 billion positive cash. 2015, 11.5 billion positive cash. In 16, we have roughly 4 billion in positive cash, which is not as good as we had hoped for. We have an internal target of 0.8 to 0.9 cash conversion rate, so we would have liked this to be double the amount. However, with the increasing raw material prices in tuna especially, this is what is dragging down free cash flow performance, and that's where we are slightly depressed for the last couple of quarters. I guess we will focus a lot on this to bring working capital down, bring inventories down further, but at the same time, we also need to breathe with the market when raw material prices change. Quick financial position, short-term debt is now at 65. Total debt is now at 66 billion baht from roughly 39 billion baht a year ago. We have successfully refinanced all our outstanding US dollar external debt. We brought most of the debt into Thailand. Thailand is an extremely attractive debt capital market, and we've been able to get here very attractive a very attractive refinancing structure. If we look at maturity, this picture is a little bit warped because in the 39% short-term debt, we still have the full Red Lobster bridge, short-term bridge funding included. So if we look into Q1, the long-term will increase further, and this is exactly in line. This is exactly in line with our strategy to push the maturity profile for our debt more into a longer-term structure to have a longer-term benefit from currently low interest rates. If we look at our net debt bridge, 15 to 16, we started at net debt of 36 billion. We had an EBITDA of 11. A couple of changes. CapEx is a bit higher than it used to be, and I guess it will continue to be a little bit on an elevated level during a time when we do more capital expenditures into automation and into equipment to drive plant efficiencies. We have then invested into Red Lobster, Rügenfisch, and Shenu, and we have paid our dividends, and that leads us to a net debt position of 65 billion. Net debt to equity 1.37 times. Again, if we exclude out of this the whole Red Lobster transaction, we are a little bit below 1, which we feel is a very healthy structure. Now, with the weakening of Q4 and with the second half here, it was not as good. I think the next page is not really a surprise. Our capital efficiency ratios, return on equity, ROCE, are depressed, slightly depressed to prior year. So we need to now look into 2017 to come back and show here improvement in terms of underlying profitability. And with that, I'd like to quickly jump to Kun Best. We have here, maybe as a final word, to Kun Paco. You see on the picture Kun Paco, who has led our investor relations activities for the last, how long? 15 years? 14? And Paco is an invaluable resource, and he was driving the investor relations activities very, very strongly. He has now taken on a very senior executive management position in our frozen business, which we're very happy for, and we wish him all the best. And he is not replaceable, but we will try our best, Kun Best and myself and Kun Singh and the team here to live up to the standards that Paco has set. So thanks a lot, Paco, in case you're listening to this call.
Okay, and for the segment breakdown, here I would like to go discuss quickly on the segmentation. As you can see, the raw material price. Raw material price has all turned a point upward, with tuna raw material price on the average was during year 2016 was at $1,425 per ton, up 22% year on year. And salmon is have an outlier growth of during last year 2016, where the average price actually increased by 50%. And that is explained the most of the reason why our gross profit margin has suffered during year 2016. When we go quickly to the next business slide, on the three key segments, we have ambient seafood contribute now 45% of our total sales. Frozen, chilled seafood and related business contribute 42% of our sales. And finally, we have pet care, value added and other segment, which is still contribute remaining 13% of our total sales. In details, for the ambient seafood business, during the fourth quarter, the sales of ambient seafood was up 2.3% year on year to 13.9 billion baht. And down to 2.3%, sorry. The decline was mainly due to the lower volume, particularly from the US market. But for the year 2016, the ambient seafood business still growing by 3.2%, driven mostly by the growth in Rügen fish acquisition that happened early in the year. For the frozen and chilled seafood, during the fourth quarter, we have recorded the sales growth of 1.4% year on year compared to the fourth quarter of last year to 15.3 billion baht. The product repricing of mainly of the salmon and shrimp business has played a vital role in improving the sales value during the fourth quarter. But still, I mean, for the year 2016, the sales was up as high as 11% to 55.8 billion baht for the full year. But the gross profit was actually down by 5% due to the situation of high salmon price along the year to 5.1 billion baht of gross profit during year 2016. For the pet food and other business, fourth quarter sales registered strong 8% year-on-year growth to 4.4 billion. And we have shown a similar picture for the full year. During year 2016, the company and the pet food segment report the sales of 17.5 billion baht, which is up 11% year-on-year. and the margin still very solid at 4.4 billion baht, which is up 40% compared to last year. That leads to the consolidated picture of the company, where the company report gross profit for the full year of 19.9 billion baht, registered the total gross profit margin of 14.8, which is down compared to the year 2015. For year 2017 outlook and guidance, I would like to pass this back to Kun Joerg to share with us the outlook for year 2017.
Okay, great. Thanks, Kun Best. Quick comments on guidance and outlook for 2017. I think we have a strong growth expectation. I think similar to this year, we are starting really with a view that we want to capture every growth opportunity that's out there. There is going to be a positive raw material effect from tuna that is driving a top line. We have a lot of initiatives that we've started. And the culture of the company, our CEO, all our leaders that we have, we're totally committed to drive top line, and continue our growth agenda. Some of the growth will come from raw material price, some from new customers in Asia, emerging markets. The Europe branded business is driving for growth. And we have a lot of initiatives lined up, including improving the sell-in of product to Red Lobster. Gross profit margin, we expect 15 to 16% to be a realistic range, mainly due to the recovery of raw material, the raw material price situation, which we believe we can get a grip around this. We should be able to get into that range. SG&A, we intend to keep in the range of 10%. We don't expect any further reductions in the effective interest rate, so we don't expect a material change from 16 in our interest expenses. Tax rate, some of the one-time benefits are unlikely to be repeated, so we do believe we will jump back to a roughly 15% effective tax rate. CapEx will slightly increase, a lot from our R&D activities. We also have some infrastructure investments where we are driving a stronger automation of our business, and we're investing heavily into SAP. We will roll out SAP in our European business in the next 3 years, and this will cost a lot of upfront investment. We will maintain our dividend policy of a payout of at least 50%. What are key focus areas for 2017? I think first and foremost, operational improvement. I think 2016 showed to us that we do need to get an even stronger grip on our day-to-day operations in some of the businesses. I want to continue profitable grow market share in European markets. We want to continue to improve the profitability of our tuna business in the US and in private label, and we are driving for a turnaround of the salmon business in Meralliance, the chilled salmon business in Europe. Post-merger integration, continued M&A, maybe smaller transactions, maybe not as prominent, but a full focus on successfully driving post-merger integration topics and improve business integration and synergy creation. We also want to complete the loss-making, the divestment of the loss-making fleet in the first half year. We have a couple of initiatives on new businesses. We want to develop King Oscar as a global brand and grow the related businesses. We have started to launch King Oscar in Thailand and in China, and we will continue to use King Oscar as a premium seafood brand. We are launching the tuna oil business in Q4. We're in the process of investing into equipment in an oil refinery and a crude oil extraction facility, and we will accelerate our global food service and emerging markets initiatives. Innovation plays a major role. We're investing a lot into innovation. We want to be clearly identified as the leader, as the innovative leader in the seafood industry with new products and with new processes. And our sea change and tuna commitment programs demonstrate our leading capabilities and our responsibility for sustainably managing our business. So I think these are the 5 key focus areas that we have for 2017. We are committed to our 2020 growth target of 8 billion. We have a lot of initiatives around it to drive it. We don't believe that we should deviate from this target, not at this stage. We have Red Lobster that is alone $2.5 billion in revenue. We have a lot of initiatives for our organic business, frozen in the US, food service, Red Lobster, marine ingredients, innovations, and emerging markets. So we believe 8 billion is exactly the revenue target that we should keep focusing on. And with that, we're through with the slides. And I get here signs from Kun Best that we better quickly start answering some of the questions.
Thank you very much, Joerg. And that sums up the presentation. Now I'd like to open for the Q&A session for any inquiry you may have. For any participant who have any inquiry, please type in the question box on the right of the screen and click send. Okay, we have a few questions has already coming online, so we will have Joerg and Ludovic answer them one by one here. Thank you.
So let's quickly talk about the 15% to 16% gross profit margin. How can we achieve this? I think part of it comes from turning around the chilled salmon business. We had a negative gross margin in that business of around, I don't know, $20 million. If we turn around that, it's already a major improvement to our gross profit margin. Second part is pushing down price increases in the market. Part of it from inflation effects in the UK, but part of it also in our tuna business to push prices to customers and consumers from the increased raw material pricing. There's a question, how many boats are you selling? It's 5 boats that we are selling. We have already sold 1 boat earlier this year or earlier last year, and 1 boat we decommissioned. In that context, a question came up, what is the loss that we made with our fleet in 2016? Overall loss was in the range of 250 million Thai baht. And no, we do not expect to book any further impairments from the fleet. I think there we are clean. And the rest of our business, well, we operate on a going concern basis. We want to operate it successfully, and we do not operate it based on the assumption that we should have any impairments. And we are encouraging all our operations to stick with integration plans, stick with synergy plans, manage cost well, and avoid any impairment charges. Ludo, you wanna take a question?
Yeah, just to mention that on TTV, we recorded over Q4 50 million baht additional impairment, just to stick with the projected selling price that we forecast for 2017. So this is included in our 15 Q4 16 figures, and it's already in. That's why we don't expect any further impairment for next year.
Okay, we have a couple of more questions. Tax rate in France. A question on a bit more flavor around that. Tax rate is today 34%. The French government decided to reduce this tax rate to 28% by 2020. So based on this, we have to revalue our tax liabilities. And this is what we have accounted for in Q4 as a tax gain. Remember the elections in France? So new government, new hope. So maybe they reduce it even further, or depending on what government comes in, they revise this. We do hope that we stay on a stable corporate income tax level. I think 28% is great. That the government has made this step to reduce this by 6 percentage points. There's a question on acquisition costs for Red Lobster. So Red Lobster is a minority investment, so we were allowed to capitalize all our transaction fees. So in our P&L, we have not recorded any M&A related transaction costs for Red Lobster in Q4. There's a question on what were the losses of Meralliance in Q3 and Q4. The operating loss, so before tax benefits, so the operating loss of Meralliance was 145 million baht in Q3 and 122 million baht in Q4. Any update on sea change and how Thai Union deal with decreasing fish population? I think this is a very good point. For us, sea change is the instrument with which we are, with which we really want to change how the industry does business. And management of fish stock in the oceans and constant observation of problems and topics is very important for us. Yellowfin was red carded in the Indian Ocean sometime last year, and we have immediately reacted by reducing the amount of yellowfin we are processing from the Indian Ocean. So this is very important for us. Sea Change has started as a platform to seek insights from NGOs, from other interested parties and ideas. We are working with the World Wildlife Fund in some of the markets to seek advice and get insights. For us, this is one of the corporate responsibility topics that we take very seriously, and I think we made great progress. Well, some NGOs will never be happy and will ask us to do more and more. And I think as the largest player in the industry, it's also our responsibility to take this seriously and to talk and discuss with NGOs and with other stakeholders. Question on Brexit. Well, the Brexit is something that the UK government needs to make plans for. And then negotiate with the European Union on terms and conditions. The first immediate effect is that the British pound eroded by around 20%. We went through a first round of price increases in the UK to compensate for these inflation effects. We are importing our products, our tuna products from outside. They are primarily denominated in US dollars. Tuna is traded in US dollars. Currency erodes by 20%, so of course prices will ultimately increase. And I think we will be very close to this development, and we will help consumers the way we can. But what we cannot do is we cannot eat up our margin by not passing inflationary effects to the customer. What's your plan to grow Red Lobster earnings? There is a very, very strong profit improvement plan in place that is circled around several initiatives. One is what we are calling the Kitchen of the Future, which is an improvement program for the kitchen operations at Red Lobster that leads to, on the one hand, cost savings, but on the other hand, it leads to much better food quality, fresher seafood on the plates of customers, a quicker response time to customer requests, and serving the customer. It circles around food waste reduction, change in the supply chain arrangements that is targeted to reduce the wasted food. It is focused on the next generation menu, where we're looking at adding affordable items on the menu of Red Lobster. So there are a lot of activities in there that we do, or that the management of Red Lobster is doing with our full backing and support to bring the EBITDA levels up to the level where we want to see them. I think we said the short-term target next 2-3 years is $200 million US dollars in adjusted EBITDA contribution, and that would be a very strong net income contribution to Thai Union.
Maybe on this one, Joerg, we have several questions regarding the contribution from Red Lobster. So what we can say is we have a net impact from Red Lobster on Q4 amounting to 58 million baht positive, which is a net amount of financial interest, financial expenses, tax savings, and we have also a share of loss for this quarter. Q4 is traditionally a loss making for Red Lobster. So we had to accrue for this one, which was for Q4 minus 120 million baht. It was expected for us, so it was not a surprise. And at the end of the day, the Q4 net contribution from Red Lobster is positive by 58 million baht.
Could you share us more about 11 fishery improvement programs? The fishery improvement programs are projects, local projects with individual fishery communities, fishery companies, and communities, where we are sponsoring training, education, and the implementation of good practices for sustainable fishing. And the ultimate objective of these fishery improvement projects is to bring those fisheries on a sustainability platform, hopefully into an MSC certification in the end. And we are sponsoring this. We are financing part of this together with customers, with other industry partners. We're sponsoring this with know-how. We're sponsoring it with money, trainers that go there, people that we are hiring or that these fishery projects are hiring to develop systematics, how to drive sustainable fishing in the oceans. There's a question on larger loss from other income or from joint venture business. Well, the Red Lobster contribution is basically coming on the one hand from management fees we're charging to Red Lobster, the dividend income we get from our preferred units. But on the flip side, Q4 was still net income negative in Red Lobster, and we are accounting for a 25% share in that.
Maybe there was one question regarding what is discontinued operations. So just to be clear, we have only one business here, which is TTV. Under accounting standards, with certain conditions, you can reclassify some transactions in this specific line. So it's still included in our net income. However, it is excluding from the operating performance. And because we signed in our Q4 an MOU for the sale of TTV over 2017, we were allowed to reclassify the whole loss from TTV in this specific line. When the transaction will be completed, we won't have any more fishing boats within the group. Everything will have been sold.
There is one question regarding a news article in Post today. I cannot comment, or we can't comment, and I don't want to comment on any specific issue reported in the newspapers. We're buying all our tuna from traders and from large trading companies, seafood trading companies. So if there is one or the other fleet or boats that have difficulties on managing their operations, it does actually not affect us. We can continue to buy tuna from any other trader. We have very good relationships with our suppliers on tuna, and this should not have an impact on Thai Union.
We have one question on related to COSI. So is COSI profitable for 2016 and sales? So the answer is yes, COSI is profitable. There was a change in the strategy for 16 for COSI. So we decided to focus more on the gross profit improvement and the profitability instead of the sales. So as a result, the sales for 2016 decreased by 4%. But however, we improved the gross profit and the profitability there. So this is related to COSI.
Okay, I think we're slowly coming to the end. Any more questions? Anyone want to raise additional question? Please type here into the Q&A box.
Okay, and since there's no more question on the line, so this concludes our live webcast for Thai Union Group Year 2016 results announcement today. Thank you very much for your time and interest in participating in the event today. If you have any further inquiry, please feel free to contact our IR department anytime during the office hours. So I wish you all a good day, and thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.